Have you ever sat in your car enjoying all the little conveniences, Bluetooth, cup holders, backup cameras, without realizing how many game-changing ideas never made it this far? Over the years, automakers have tried all sorts of clever inventions. Some were stylish, some were futuristic, and some were just plain strange. But while they grabbed headlines and excited car enthusiasts, many of these innovations eventually fizzled out, becoming quirky relics of automotive history. So, buckle up as we take a ride through 15 car innovations that looked brilliant at first but couldn't stand the test of time. Starting at number 15, we have bench seats. From the 1920s all the way to the 1980s, these wide seats stretched across the entire front row, letting 3 passengers squeeze in side by side. Families absolutely loved them, and it made sliding in or out from either side super convenient. But there was a big problem: safety. Without proper support, headrests, or individual seat belts, bench seats became a major liability in an accident. By the 1980s, bucket seats took over, offering far better comfort, airbag compatibility, and most importantly, the protection needed in a crash. At number 14, remember those little triangular vent windows? You might know them as wing windows. In the days before air conditioning was common, they were a lifesaver, creating a nice cross breeze through the cabin without the noisy rush of a fully open window. Drivers loved them for that quick blast of fresh air. But these windows leaked water, whistled in the wind at high speeds, and made cars way too easy to break into. Once AC became a standard feature, vent windows vanished, leaving only a bit of nostalgia behind. Rolling in at number 13, ashtrays. It's hard to imagine now, but cars had ashtrays built into the dashboard, in the doors, and even in the back seats for passengers. It was just a normal part of the driving experience. But as society became more aware of the dangers of smoking, and the obvious fire risks became a concern for automakers, ashtrays started disappearing. By the 1990s, they were largely replaced with something much healthier and more useful: cup holders and small storage compartments. Now for something truly wild at number 12, in-car record players. Yes, this was a real thing. In the 1950s, a few luxury automakers tried installing record players in cars so you could spin your favorite vinyl on the go. The idea sounded incredibly luxurious at the time. Imagine your personal soundtrack on the highway. But the reality was less glamorous. The moment you hit a bump, the needle would skip across the record. Add in the bulky size, the distraction factor for the driver, and the constant maintenance required, and these players were doomed from the start. Soon, 8-tracks, cassettes, and later CDs buried the in-car turntable for good. At number 11, we have Landau bars. You might not know the name, but you've probably seen them. They're those decorative S-shaped bars on the side panels of certain cars, meant to mimic the look of old horse-drawn carriages. They were all about adding a touch of classic old-world elegance. They looked fancy, sure, but they had absolutely zero function. Eventually, drivers realized they were just dead weight that added complexity, rusted over time, and could break. By the late 20th century, Landau bars were gone, replaced by actual functional upgrades like sunroofs and panoramic glass roofs. Moving on to number 10, the column shifter. Back in the 1940s and 50s, the gear shifter was often mounted right on the steering column. The main benefit? It freed up floor space, making room for a third passenger up front on that bench seat. Sounds pretty smart, right? Well, the problem was that these shifters were notoriously imprecise, felt flimsy, wore out quickly, and caused endless maintenance headaches for mechanics. Then sports cars popularized the floor shifter, and once drivers got a feel for that sportier, more direct connection to the transmission, the column shifter slowly faded into automotive history. And at number 9, luggage racks. They were purely functional, a way to carry all your gear. But they had some serious downsides, and if you didn't tie everything down perfectly, you risked your bags going flying onto the highway. Eventually, automakers started designing cars with much bigger trunks and more clever interior storage solutions. while sleek enclosed roof boxes offered a safer and more aerodynamic upgrade for those who still needed extra space. Coming in at number 8, pop-up headlights. For a few decades, nothing screamed cool like a sports car with hidden headlights. They gave cars a sleek aerodynamic profile during the day and had a futuristic feel when they flipped up at night. Cars like the Lamborghini Countach and the classic Mazda Miata made them iconic. But they had problems. The motors would fail, leaving one eye stuck open or shut. They were also heavy, complex, and expensive to repair. Worse, new pedestrian safety regulations made them impractical. So, by the early 2000s, this beloved design feature disappeared for good. At number 7, the automatic seatbelt. Motorized seatbelts that would automatically slide along a track on the doorframe when you got in. The idea was to force people to wear them, but they were slow, clunky, and often broke. Plus, you still had to buckle the lap belt separately, which defeated the purpose for many. Once airbags became mandatory, this awkward, over-engineered system was quickly abandoned for the simple, reliable three-point belts we use today. Number 6 is the T-top roof. A T-top was a compromise between a hardtop and a full convertible. It featured 2 removable glass panels, leaving a rigid bar running down the center of the roof. It offered an open-air feeling while maintaining the car's structural integrity. It was a huge hit in the 70s and 80s muscle car scene. Those panels almost always leaked. They rattled, were a pain to store when removed, and offered a prime target for thieves. As sunroofs and convertibles improved, the leaky T-top was left behind. Slowing down for number 5, carburetors. For nearly a century, the carburetor was the heart of the gasoline engine, mixing air and fuel together. Mechanics could tune them, and they were relatively simple devices. But they were also inefficient, temperature-sensitive, and couldn't adapt well to changing conditions, which meant poor fuel economy and higher emissions. In the 1980s, electronic fuel injection came along. It was more precise, more reliable, and far more efficient. At number 4, we have full-size spare tires. It used to be standard for every car to come with a full-size spare that was identical to the other 4 tires. If you got a flat, you could swap it out and continue your journey without a second thought. But these tires were heavy, took up a huge amount of trunk space, and added weight that hurt fuel efficiency. Automakers replaced them with those compact donut spares, which are smaller, lighter, and only meant for short, low-speed trips to a repair shop. It saves space and money, but it's definitely a downgrade in convenience. Coming in at number 3, the foot-operated dimmer switch. Before headlight controls moved to the steering column stalk, changing from high beams to low beams was done with your foot. There was a small button on the floor, to the left of the brake and clutch. It made sense at the time, keeping your hands on the wheel. But it was also easy to hit by accident, and the switch was prone to getting clogged with dirt, salt, and water, causing it to fail. Moving all the lighting controls to a single convenient stalk was a much cleaner and more reliable solution. Our runner-up at number 2 is the hood ornament. From the spirit of ecstasy on a Rolls-Royce to the 3-pointed star on a Mercedes, hood ornaments were symbols of luxury, power, and brand identity. They were beautiful, chrome-plated works of art sitting proudly on the front of the car. But 2 things led to their downfall. First, pedestrian safety regulations made a sharp metal object at the front of the car a bad idea. Second, they were prime targets for thieves. Today, most brands have integrated their logo flat into the grille, leaving the hood ornament as a relic of a more elegant era. And finally, the number 1 failed car innovation, the in-car telephone. Long before we all had cell phones in our pockets, having a phone in your car was the ultimate status symbol. These things were huge, incredibly expensive, and permanently installed in the vehicle. The hardware took up a ton of space, and call quality was often terrible. It was a fascinating glimpse into the future, but it was a clumsy, impractical one. Once portable mobile phones became smaller, cheaper, and more powerful, the dedicated car phone became obsolete almost overnight, serving as a perfect example of a great idea that was simply waiting for technology to catch up. So there you have it, 15 innovations that just couldn't make the cut. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this trip down automotive memory lane, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.